There are different variations of the Great Tribulation, but basically most futurists believe that the Antichrist will appear in the future, and that's when there will be the Great Tribulation for 7 years. As I've said earlier, that view is based on a misunderstanding of Daniel's 70 weeks. I believe in the historicist interpretation of the Great Tribulation, and that is that it's been already. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is in the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in the winter or on the Sabbath. These verses speak of the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, and that was fulfilled not long after Jesus gave this prophecy. Another account is in Luke 21:20, which tells us that when you see the armies around the city of Jerusalem, that destruction is near. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its destruction is at hand. The unbelieving Jews could not be convinced that their beloved city could be taken by anyone, for they believed that it was protected by God. Not even the appearance of the Roman armies could weaken their blind self-confidence. But at the first sight of the encircling armies, the Christians knew that the time to leave was at hand according to the prophecy of Jesus. But how to flee was the question, because the encompassing Roman lines close about the city. Another problem was the Jewish zealots, who would not allow anyone to leave. It was in October 66 AD that the Roman commander Cestius came against the city of Jerusalem, but for some unaccountable reason soon withdrew his armies from it. The Christians discerned that this was the sign foretold by Christ and looked for an opportunity to flee. The zealots flew out after the retiring Romans, furiously attacking the rear guards, and while they did, the watching Christians knew that the time for escape had come. They fled the city and out of the country round about. Christ had said, "Pray that your flight is not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath." This prayer was answered, for it was in the autumn and on a weekday that escape was made. Watching for the sign and instantly obeying, they were delivered. It is a remarkable fact that in the terrible siege which occurred under the Roman Prince Titus, 3.5 years later, not a single Christian is known to have lost his life, while 1,100,000 Jews are said to have perished in it. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand, Matthew 24:15. On August the 10th, 70 AD, the temple was set on fire, and at the very juncture of the dissolution, even while it was in flames, the Roman soldiers set up on the battlements of the outer wall the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, the standards of their legions under which they now made desolation, and therefore said to be the abomination of desolation, as every standard had painted on it the image of the tutela, guardian god of that legion, to which the Romans sacrificed after their idolatrous manner, as they stood erected upon the holy place. This comes from a chronological treatise upon the 70 weeks of Daniel by Benjamin Marshall, which was published in 1728. This speaks of the absolute destruction of the temple by the Romans. All was thrown down to the ground, except a part of the western wall and 2 or 3 towers reserved as monuments of victory. And the plough was drawn over the ground on which the city and temple had stood, to show that the Romans meant this to be the final destruction. There was not one stone left upon another, as prophesied by Jesus in Matthew 24:2. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days be shortened, no flesh shall be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. After the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, Jesus says there will be great tribulation, especially for the Christians. This is the tribulation that the church was to pass through in the intervening centuries. Daniel had said that the papal power would wear out the saints of the Most High, Daniel 7:25. This was the long-continued persecution of his elect, the Christians, and the shortening of the allotted time. God was to intervene in some special way to save his people. This happened through the Reformation and the spreading abroad of God's word to the world. Soon after AD 70, Christians came under great persecution, organized by the ruling powers of Rome. History shows us that 10 million Christians were martyred under pagan Rome up until 313 AD. But an even greater persecution was to come under the papal Roman system, when apparently 50 million perished in the most horrible ways. This Great Tribulation of Christians ended about 1773 AD, when the Jesuit order of priests was dissolved, who had organized the Inquisition. The Jesuits were specifically formed to destroy the heretics. There will be times of great trouble up until Jesus returns, but the persecution and tribulation of Christians by the Antichrist sitting in the church has ended.